My name is Camille Jordan, and I'm 29 years old. Domingo once told me, "You're too soft for this world." He said it like a warning, or maybe like an insult. Back then I thought he meant it tenderly. I smiled and answered, "Then maybe you just need someone gentle." But I should have heard the rest of what he didn't say. Someone easy to hurt. The night it started unraveling, the air in our apartment felt heavy, like the oxygen had learned how to sigh. Domingo came home late again. He tossed his jacket on the couch, still smelling of beer and mint gum, and muttered something about grabbing drinks with the guys. I'd been waiting up, sketching designs for a client, my laptop battery flashing red. I asked how the night went. He shrugged, scrolling through his phone thumb, flying across the screen. "Good," he said without looking up. That word "good" had become his shield. It used to be a bridge between us. Now it was a wall. I tried again. "Who'd you go with?" He chuckled. "Why does it matter? You trust me, right?" The way he said trust sounded like a test I hadn't studied for. On the coffee table sat 2 takeout boxes, one for him, one untouched for me. The noodles had gone cold hours ago. I was tired of waiting for him to remember that I existed after dark. Later that week, I noticed his hoodie smelled different. Not like the usual musk of cigarettes and detergent, but something faintly floral, expensive. When I teased him about switching colognes, he laughed too quickly, said it was from some perfume sample a bartender sprayed. I told myself not to be paranoid. That's what women are taught, to doubt their instincts before doubting their men. But then came the sighs. He'd sigh when I asked how his day was. He'd sigh when I told him about a new client, like caring had become a chore. Saturday night, he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt. "I'm meeting the guys again," he said. In that I asked before I could stop myself. The crisp white shirt, the cologne, the styled hair, it wasn't a casual hangout look. He smirked at my reflection. "Don't start." I held his gaze through the mirror. "I'm not starting anything." "Good," he said, grabbing his keys. "Because I don't like being interrogated." The door slammed before I could reply. I sat there staring at the half-open drawer where he kept a box of Polaroids US at the beach, laughing faces sun-kissed. It used to make me smile. That night I shoved it shut. He stumbled in at 3 a.m., smelling like whiskey and someone else's perfume. I was awake, lying perfectly still in the dark. "Domingo," I whispered. He froze for a heartbeat, then grunted. "Go back to sleep." His shoes thudded to the floor, his jacket dropped carelessly onto the chair. The same one where I'd hung the Christmas ornament we bought together last year. I remember staring at that ornament, a tiny glass heart, and thinking how fragile things look right before they break. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting long stripes across the bed. Domingo was already gone. On the kitchen counter sat his coffee mug. There was a faint lipstick stain on the rim, deep crimson, not my shade. I picked it up slowly, my fingers trembling. The scent of cherry gloss clung to the ceramic. For a moment, I wanted to smash it against the wall. Instead, I set it gently in the sink and turned on the tap. Warm water filled the cup, washing away the red. Maybe that was the problem with me. I washed everything away, anger, suspicion, pride, because softness felt safer than confrontation. But when I looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, my face pale and tired, something inside whispered, "He's already gone, Camille. You're just the echo he leaves behind." That evening, as the city lights flickered outside, Domingo came home humming. He poured himself a drink, acting as if nothing had shifted. "You look tense," he said casually. "Do I?" He grinned. "You always overthink." I studied him, the curve of his smile, the ease in his tone. It hit me then how much effort indifference takes. "I just miss us," I murmured. He paused, sipping his whiskey. "Maybe you should stop missing what doesn't exist anymore." The glass slipped from his fingers slightly enough for a drop to hit the counter. He didn't notice when I whispered, "Maybe you should too." That night I sat on the balcony. The city hum below me. My sketchbook open, but untouched. The moon hung low, a silver bruise in the sky. I traced circles on the page, thinking about how softness bends, stretches, endures, but never wins. Domingo's laughter echoed faintly from the other room through the thin walls that used to feel like home. And that was the moment I realized he wasn't cruel. He just didn't know how to love someone he couldn't break. The wind rustled the curtains, brushing against my face like a warning. I closed my sketchbook and whispered, maybe softness is just another word for blind. And that night, the last night he kissed me without guilt, I finally understood what his sighs had been trying to tell me all along. My love was a language he'd stopped learning. 2 weeks after that night, I stopped asking where he was going. He stopped pretending to answer. That's how distance happens, not in explosions, but in silence. One skipped dinner, one ignored. Message, one lie told so smoothly, it starts to sound like truth. I remember the first time I heard her name, Melissa. She was the new project manager at his office. The way he talked about her made my stomach tighten, though he said nothing explicitly wrong. She's wild but smart. He'd said grinning in a way he hadn't grinned at me in months. She rides a motorbike. Nearly broke her arm last year in Bali, still went hiking 2 days later. Crazy, right? I laughed a brittle sound that didn't reach my chest. Sounds like she makes life exciting. He looked at me, smirked, and said softly, "Yeah, she does." That was the first punch I didn't see coming. The next few weeks felt like watching a movie I wasn't cast in anymore. Domingo came home later and later. When he did, his phone stayed face down, locked. His laughter changed sharper, careless. I caught the reflection of his smile in the kitchen window once, and it looked foreign. At dinner one night, I said quietly, "You've been different lately." He sighed that same exhausted, defensive sigh I'd learned to hate. "Different how? Distant," I said. He chuckled without humor. "Maybe I'm just tired. Or maybe you're just done." The words slipped out before I could stop them. He froze fork halfway to his mouth. "You always do this," he said coldly. "You twist everything into drama. I'm trying to talk Domingo. That's what couples do." "Yeah, well, maybe that's our problem. You talk too much." He pushed back his chair and left the table. I sat there for hours, the candle between us, melting down to wax and smoke. A few nights later, my friend Liam called after work. "I saw Domingo downtown," he said carefully. He wasn't alone. "Melissa?" I asked, already knowing the answer. A pause. "I think so." I didn't want to assume. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the empty couch where Domingo and I used to fall asleep during movie marathons. The ghost of his laughter still lingered in the cushions. That night, he came home at 2 a.m. and tried to slip into bed quietly, as if his betrayal could be quiet. I turned on the lamp. The light caught something a hickey, faint but undeniable blooming along his collarbone. "Who is she?" His eyes flicked up flat and cold. "You're being paranoid. Then look me in the eye and say it." He didn't. The silence between us was louder than shouting. "Her name's Melissa," I said. "The one with the bike, right?" His jaw clenched. "You don't get to snoop through my life. I live in it," I snapped. He laughed, not cruelly, but pityingly. "No, Camille. You exist in it. There's a difference." That sentence cracked something deep in me. He slept on the couch that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds until sunrise. At 5:27 a.m., I got up, pulled my suitcase from the closet, and started packing. Not frantically, calmly, almost clinically. For every shirt I folded, I remembered a promise he'd broken. For every photo I slipped into the drawer, I remembered a night he'd come home smelling like someone else. By the time he woke up, half the apartment was empty. He rubbed his eyes, confused. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said simply. "Over what?" "A fight." I looked at him, really looked the man who used to bring me coffee in bed, who once called me his safe place. All I saw now was a straw danger, trying to remember if he cared. "You don't love me anymore," I said quietly. He smirked. "Love isn't everything. Neither is excitement." He grabbed his jacket. "Maybe you should find someone who likes boring things. Someone who matches your softness." I smiled faintly. "And maybe you should find someone who doesn't confuse chaos for passion." He stopped in the doorway, stunned by my calm. "You really think you'll be happier without me? I think I'll finally be me." He left without another word, and for the first time, the door closing sounded less like abandonment and more like freedom. I spent the next morning cleaning what was left behind his coffee stains, his half-read books, his careless fingerprints on the glass table. When I reached the small box hidden in the nightstand, I hesitated. Inside was a letter I'd written weeks earlier, one he'd never seen. It wasn't a love letter. It was a proposal. Not a marriage proposal, a life one. An offer to start fresh, move to a quieter city, rebuild what we'd broken. I'd written, "You say I'm too soft." Maybe that's what our love needs, softness, to heal all this noise. Now reading it again, it felt naive. I placed the letter inside the empty ring box I'd bought for myself, a promise ring that would never be given. Before I left, I took one last look at our apartment. The pale morning light painted the walls gold, and for a fleeting second it looked like forgiveness. Then I whispered to no one, One day you'll understand what real strength costs. I left the key on the counter beside the cold coffee mug and his untouched phone, the one that used to buzz with messages that were meant for me. And as I closed the door, I realized something strange. I wasn't crying. Not because it didn't hurt, but because some heartbreaks dry your tears before they ever fall. The first week alone felt like being dropped into another language, one where everything familiar sounded foreign. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. Every creak of the floorboards made me turn my head, half expecting Domingo's footsteps, but all that came was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic below. I spent days in autopilot making coffee. I never finished scrolling through photos I should have deleted. Every corner of my place felt haunted. His jacket still hung on the back of the chair. His toothbrush stood beside mine, its bristles stiff and dry. It was like he'd died, except he was still out there, probably laughing with Melissa, living like I never existed. On the third night, I drank cheap wine straight from the bottle and opened the Notes app on my phone. I started typing letters to him I'd never send. Some angry, some pleading, some nothing but fragments. I miss who you were when you still listened. She'll leave you the way you left me. I hope she loves you enough to break you. I deleted them all before morning. The days turned into a blur of meaningless routines. Wake up, shower, pretend to eat, work, smile at clients, cry in the bathroom stall, sleep if I was lucky. My reflection became my only witness. Each day I looked a little less like the girl he called too soft. Dark circles, sharper jaw, quiet eyes. Grief had a way of hardening things, even kindness. But healing didn't come with a cinematic montage. It came slowly, cruelly, like rust peeling off something buried too long. I forced myself to go for runs at dawn to feel the cold air burn through my lungs. I joined a ceramics class, my hands shaping wet clay into something solid, something mine. And one morning while painting glaze on a vase, I realized I hadn't thought about him in almost an hour. That was progress. 3 months passed before I heard his name again. Liam, our mutual friend, messaged me. Just thought you should know. Domingo and Melissa moved in together. I stared at the text, waiting for the ache to hit. It didn't. It just settled in, quiet and tired, like an old injury that only hurts when it rains. Then a few weeks later, they're posting pics together. Look serious. I muted the chat. By the 5th month, I'd started to sleep through the night again. My apartment no longer smelled like him. The scent of detergent and whiskey had been replaced with sandalwood and lemon candles. I'd rearranged the furniture, painted one wall deep green, and adopted a stray cat that loved curling up on my chest, like it owned my heart. Every small act of change felt like reclaiming territory. Every quiet night spent alone felt like proof I could survive myself. Then, out of nowhere, Liam called again. His voice was tense. You probably don't want to hear this, but they've been fighting. A lot. Why are you telling me this? I asked. He hesitated, because I think he's different. Angry. Scary, even. Melissa showed up to a party with a bruise on her arm. Said she fell, but... He didn't finish. He didn't have to. I sipped my tea and said calmly, "That's not my circus anymore." He sighed. "You're really over him, huh?" "No," I said honestly. "I just stopped bleeding over someone who keeps stabbing." The seasons changed. I threw myself into work, designed a cafe downtown, landed a feature in a local magazine, and even started smiling real smiles, not the polite ones. My therapist once told me, "You'll know you've healed when their name stops being a wound." I didn't believe her then. But one night, as rain tapped softly against my window, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd said his name out loud. And then, like a cruel joke, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 2:47 a.m. I should have ignored it, but my thumb hesitated. I answered. A shaky exhale, then a voice faint, broken. "Camille, it's me." My pulse froze. "Domingo." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The clock's ticking grew louder. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold and small. "I'm at the police station," he whispered. Melissa, she tried to leave. I tried to stop her. Things got bad." His voice cracked. "I didn't mean to. I don't know who I am anymore." I stared at the ceiling, at the shadows twisting across it. I felt nothing. Not rage, not pity, just emptiness. "Why are you calling me?" I asked quietly. "Because you're the only one who ever actually cared," he said. His voice was trembling, desperate. "I was stupid, okay? You were good to me. You were—" "Stop," I interrupted. A silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I said, Call your parents Domingo or a shelter, but don't call me again. Then I hung up. I stared at my reflection in the black screen of my phone eyes, steady hand unmoving. For the first time, I didn't feel weak for walking away. I felt strong. Cold, maybe, but strong. Outside, thunder rolled. The rain began to fall harder, streaking against the window like fingers clawing to get in. I whispered to myself, he used to call me soft. Maybe softness is what saved me. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and turned off the light. That night, I slept through until morning. The next morning, I half believed the call had been a dream, the kind that leaves your heart racing but fades once sunlight hits the room. But when I checked my phone there, it was one missed call, one voicemail, one message. Please, I just need to hear your voice. I deleted all three. Still, that day, everything I did felt off balance. Every sound reminded me of his voice. The kettle whistling, the door clicking shut, the neighbor's TV humming through the wall. I caught myself glancing at my phone every few minutes like it was a wound that might reopen. By the afternoon, I turned it off completely. Silence. That kind of silence that used to hurt now felt like armor. A week passed before he tried again. Unknown number, different city code. I didn't answer. Then another and another. Each one a ghost reaching out through static. My therapist said he's not calling because you're his solution. He's calling because you were his mirror. I didn't fully understand until one night while cooking dinner, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text. I can't stop thinking about how kind you were. No one else ever stayed when I fell apart. I stared at the screen spoon, frozen mid-stir. He still didn't get it. Kindness isn't staying through destruction. It's leaving before you destroy yourself. The next few weeks were a quiet war. He'd text from random numbers, and I'd block them. He'd leave voicemails long and rambling heavy with regret. Each one started the same Camille, please. I'd listen for 2 seconds, then delete. But one evening, curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. His voice came through raw, hoarse. I see your face everywhere. Every woman I pass. Every empty bed. I miss how safe I felt. I thought safety was weakness. Turns out it was peace. I ruined everything. For a split second, something inside me twisted. Not pity recognition. I knew what it was to ache for what you destroyed. But that didn't mean I owed him anything. I deleted the message before it ended. Spring rolled in. My business began thriving. I even started laughing again, that unguarded laugh that shakes the chest instead of the throat. Kevin, the man I'd met at a design conference, started showing up at my studio with coffee, asking about my day instead of filling it with his own. He was patient, soft-spoken, the kind of man who looked you in the eye when you spoke. He never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. Just enough. One night as we walked by the river, I told him about Domingo. Not everything just enough. He listened, hands in his pockets quiet. When I finished, he said gently, sometimes the people who break us are just the lessons we needed to meet the ones who won't. I remember nodding, trying not to cry. But closure, it seems, doesn't arrive politely. It bangs on your door at 2 a.m. Literally. That night, I woke to the sound of fists slamming against my apartment door. Heavy, desperate. My heart jolted awake before the rest of me. Camille. The voice was unmistakable, hoarse, cracked. Domingo. I froze, pulse hammering. Through the peephole, I saw him soaked from rain. Eyes wild, bruised along the jawline. He looked like a man clawing his way out of a nightmare. Please open the door, he gasped. I have nowhere else to go. Behind me, Kevin stirred his voice groggy. Who is that? No one, I whispered. Another crash on the door. Camille, please. I felt Kevin sit up. That sounds like someone who knows you. Just stay here, I said, slipping out of bed. I pressed my palms against the door. Go home, Domingo, I said quietly. You can't be here. I don't have a home anymore, he shouted. She's gone. Everyone's gone. My chest tightened, but I didn't unlock it. The rain beat harder outside, his sobs mixed with thunder. Inside, Kevin stepped into the hallway, his voice steady but firm. Do you want me to call the police? I shook my head. He'll leave. For a moment, everything was still, just his shallow breathing on the other side, mine on this. Then softly he said, You were supposed to save me. My throat closed. Once maybe I would have believed that was my job. Not anymore. I already did, I whispered, by walking away. He started pounding again, each blow weaker than the last, until it turned into dull thuds, then silence. When I finally dared to open the door at dawn, he was gone. Only the rain remained, and a single bloody handprint smeared across the wood. Beside it, a broken phone charger, the one I'd given him 2 years ago, still wrapped in the same frayed cord. I picked it up carefully, my fingers trembling. It felt like holding the past, something fragile, electric, and useless now. I threw it into the trash. Then I turned to Kevin, who stood quietly behind me, coffee in hand, watching without judgment. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. Just tired. He wrapped his arms around me, and for the first time in years, I let myself lean. Outside, the city was waking up. Inside, something in me was finally going to sleep the part that still thought I could rescue a man who refused to rescue himself. That night, I lit a candle, sat on the balcony, and whispered to the dark, "I hope he finds what he's looking for, just not here." And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or pity, just peace. 3 weeks passed. No calls, no texts, no pounding at my door. For a while, I almost believed the ghost had finally gone quiet. But ghosts never disappear, they wait. And Domingo, in his own haunted way, was waiting too. It was a Tuesday evening when Liam messaged me. "He's in rehab, overdosed on Xanax and vodka a few days ago. They found him barely breathing." My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart didn't skip, it sank slow and heavy like a stone dropped in deep water. "Is he alive?" I typed. "Yeah, barely. I thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time. Then finally, I set my phone face down and returned to sanding the wooden frame I was working on the last detail for a client's art studio. Domingo was still out there somewhere, trying to destroy himself slower this time, but I couldn't be his oxygen anymore. The next morning, I woke to sunlight filtering through the curtains, soft and gold. Kevin was in the kitchen, making pancakes, humming off key. The smell of butter filled the air, warm, ordinary, safe. He looked up when I entered. "Morning, sleepyhead. Morning. Coffee always." I smiled, and for the first time it didn't feel forced. He poured me a cup, kissed my forehead, and asked about my day. And just like that, the smallest, simplest thing I realized, I was living in a world where kindness didn't come with conditions. Later that afternoon, I met Liam at a cafe near the river. He looked restless, tapping his spoon against the mug. "I saw him," he said as soon as I sat down. "At the clinic. He asked about you." I took a slow breath. "And you told him that you're doing well, that you're happy." Liam hesitated. He cried Camille. I said nothing. "You don't care at all, do you?" he asked almost accusingly. I looked out the window, the sunlight glinting off the water people, walking dogs, laughing, living. Finally, I said, "I used to care enough for both of us. I spent everything I had on that. There's nothing left to give." He sighed, shaking his head. "I don't know how you can be so calm about it." "Because caring doesn't mean keeping the door open," I said softly. "Sometimes it means locking it." He didn't respond. When I got home, I found Kevin waiting by the door, holding 2 cups of iced tea. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, sipping in silence. He didn't ask about Domingo. He didn't need to. Some men talk. The right ones just understand. Days turned into weeks. My business picked up. My cat Luna had taken to sleeping beside Kevin every night, as if she'd already decided he was family. Still occasionally, when the rain hit the windows just right, I'd think about that bloody handprint. It wasn't guilt, just memory. I'd think of how I once believed love meant saving someone. Now I knew it meant saving myself too. A month later, while cleaning old boxes, I found something I hadn't seen since before the breakup, the ring box. The one I'd bought for myself, a symbol of hope or delusion, or maybe both. Inside was the note I'd written months before Domingo left me. My handwriting looked fragile now. "You say I'm too soft. Maybe softness is what love needs to survive." I almost laughed. Not mockingly, but with something that sounded like grace. Because I finally understood softness isn't weakness. It's endurance. And endurance was how I got here. That night, Kevin and I went to a rooftop dinner with friends. Someone made a toast to love that lasts. Everyone cheered, glasses clinking. Kevin leaned close and whispered, "To love that doesn't hurt." I smiled. "To love that heals." We drank to that. When I got home, I checked my phone before bed. One new email. From Domingo M. Subject line, "I get it now." My breath caught. I opened it slowly. "You were right. You weren't too soft. You were too good. And I was too stupid to know what that meant. I'm sorry for every bruise I left the ones on you and the ones you hid. I hope the world's been kind to you. E. I stared at it until the words blurred. Then I moved the message into the archive folder. Not trash, not unread, just past. That weekend, Kevin and I drove to the countryside. We stopped at a small rescue shelter, a golden retriever mix, pressed its nose against my hand through the cage. Kevin smiled. I think he likes you. I think I like him too. We took him home, named him Lucky. As we walked through the park that evening, Kevin's hand in mine, Lucky's leash tugging gently forward, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me, the kind that doesn't shout or sparkle, the kind that simply is. Sometimes when people break you, they think they've destroyed you, but all they've done is clear space for who you were meant to become. I wasn't the same woman Domingo left behind. I was softer in all the right places, stronger in all the rest. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel haunted, just free. 5 months after the email, I almost forgot it existed. Almost. But sometimes healing doesn't erase the past, it just stops it from echoing. Life had settled into something gentle. Kevin and I moved into a sunlit apartment above a flower shop. The place always smelled faintly of jasmine, and the owner downstairs slipped us free tulips every Sunday morning. I filled the living room with my sketches, the walls painted a pale sage. Kevin cooked on weekends. I worked late on weekdays. It was normal, quiet, the kind of normal that used to scare me because it meant nothing dramatic was happening, no storms, no sharp edges. And that's how I knew it was real. Then one morning while waiting for a client call, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, again. I froze, staring at the screen. The world outside kept moving traffic laughter, the hum of the espresso machine, but inside me, everything went still. I didn't answer. Not this time. Not ever again. The voicemail came anyway. I told myself not to listen, but temptation is a cruel human thing. So I pressed play. Camille, it's Domingo. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm leaving the rehab center next week. They say I should make amends, but I don't even know if that word means anything anymore. I used to think you were too kind, like that made you weak. Turns out kindness is the hardest thing to live without. I hope you found peace, because I think I finally want to. His voice cracked at the end, followed by a long pause, then the sound of him quietly hanging up. I sat there, phone in hand, listening to the silence that followed. It didn't hurt this time. It just ended. That evening, Kevin and I went for a walk with Lucky. The air was crisp, the city lights reflecting off puddles like tiny constellations. Everything okay? Kevin asked, watching me. Yeah, I said honestly. I just got an old ghost trying to say goodbye. He smiled softly. And did you let it? I think so. We stopped at a crosswalk, the red light glowing across our faces. I used to pray for him to change, I admitted. I used to pray that he'd realize what he lost. And now I pray he never finds me again. The light turned green. We walked on. The next few days passed quietly. Work, laughter, dinners with friends. Every night I'd curl up with Kevin and Lucky at my feet, realizing how absurdly grateful I was for ordinary happiness. Then one afternoon I received a call from Liam again. His voice was hesitant. I ran into Domingo. Okay. He looks different, sober, calm. He said he's working at a mechanic shop now. Fixes cars, stays out of trouble. That's good, I said. He asked about you. What did you tell him? That you're happy, that you don't need to hear from him. I smiled. Thank you. You really don't want to see him? No, I said, because I already saw everything I needed to. That night I dreamed of the last time I saw him, the blood on my doorknob, the pleading eyes, the way his voice broke on my name. But in the dream I didn't open the door. I just stood there listening to the rain until the sound faded away. When I woke, the pillow was damp, but my chest was light. A few weeks later, a package arrived at my office with no sender. Inside was a small velvet box. My pulse stuttered. For a second I thought it was the ring. But inside was a note. One line written in shaky handwriting, for every time you saved me when I didn't deserve it. And underneath it, a tiny clay heart, cracked but mended with gold lines running through it. Kintsugi style, the art of repair. I didn't need to guess who sent it. I placed it on my desk beside a photograph of me and Kevin laughing in the rain. It looked strangely beautiful there, not as a token of regret, but as proof that healing can come from the same hands that once caused the pain. Later that night, Kevin found me staring at it. What's that? He asked. An old chapter, I said simply. He looked at it for a moment, then took my hand. Then let's keep writing the new one. I smiled. Deal. Before bed, I took one last look at the little clay heart. Once it had meant heartbreak. Now it meant survival. I whispered to it, not out of forgiveness, but closure. You were my unanswered prayer, and that was the blessing. And when I turned off the light, I realized something. Peace doesn't come when you stop hurting. It comes when you finally stop needing the story to end differently. 5 years later, the past has a funny way of feeling both distant and familiar, like a song you used to love but forgot the lyrics to. By then, I was 34, engaged to Kevin, and living the life I once thought was too quiet for me. Our home overlooked the city skyline, a blend of soft grays and morning light. Lucky was older now, his muzzle flecked with white. I had a studio of my own, a small but thriving design company, and the girl who once begged to be loved had finally learned how to be whole on her own. That was the year I stopped flinching at my phone vibrating. The year I could hear Domingo's name and feel nothing but a calm exhale. I thought that meant the story was over. I was wrong. The engagement party was small, just close friends, family, and the quiet kind of laughter that fills a room without shouting. The jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and Kevin's mother insisted on retelling the story of how we met for the 5th time. I was carrying a tray of champagne glasses to the terrace when I felt it a shift in the air. That indescribable prickle of familiarity. I turned, and there he was, Domingo. Standing in the doorway, half shadowed by a row of ferns. He looked older, thinner, sober, his hair shorter, his posture humbler. He held a small cocktail napkin like it was something sacred. My stomach didn't twist this time. It simply acknowledged him. He stepped forward carefully, like he was afraid I might vanish. "Camille," he said quietly, "you look happy." "I am," I replied. He nodded, eyes flicking toward Kevin across the room, surrounded by my friends laughing. "He seems good for you." "He is." The silence stretched. Not heavy this time, just final. He exhaled slowly. "I didn't mean to crash. Liam invited me. I didn't realize it was mine," I finished for him. He smiled, faintly shame in his eyes. "Yeah, guess the universe wanted me to see what peace looks like." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box, the same one I'd once hidden in a drawer years ago. Inside was a simple silver promise ring, tarnished but clean. "I've been carrying this around for years," he said. "Couldn't bring myself to sell it. I kept telling myself I'd return it when I was better. Took longer than I thought." I looked at the ring, then at him. "Keep it," I said gently. "Consider it a souvenir, a reminder that we don't have to end badly to end completely." He blinked like he hadn't expected mercy. "I hurt you," he whispered. "I don't know how you can even look at me." "Because I already forgave you," I said. "Just not for you, for me." His jaw trembled. He nodded. "I'm sober now. 2 years. I'm glad," I said sincerely. "You deserve that peace." He smiled weakly. "You were right, you know. About softness." "Yeah, it's not weakness. It's what breaks the cycle." Across the room, Kevin caught my eye. He mouthed, "You okay?" I smiled, held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes. Domingo noticed, following my gaze. "She looks at you like I used to," he murmured, "except she doesn't seem afraid you'll leave." "That's because I won't," I said simply. He nodded, glancing at the ring box one last time before closing it. "I guess this is it then. It's been it for a long time," I replied. He managed a small bittersweet smile. "I'm happy for you, Camille." Truly, I believed him. As he turned to go, the band began playing "Fly Me to the Moon," the same song my father used to hum when I was a kid. I stood there for a moment, watching Domingo disappear through the glass doors, not out of longing, but gratitude. Gratitude that he existed and that he no longer defined me. When I stepped back inside, Kevin was waiting by the bar with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one. "Everything all right?" I nodded, leaning into him. "Perfect." We clinked glasses, the bubbles catching light like tiny stars. Later that night, when the party ended and the city went quiet, Kevin and I walked barefoot across the rooftop, the skyline shimmering like spilled gold. He slipped his arm around my waist. "Who was he?" he asked softly. "Someone from another life," I said. "And who are you now?" I smiled. "Someone who finally learned how to stay." He kissed me slow, certain, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to look back. When we got home, I took off my earrings, set my ring on the nightstand, and caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd once cried over missed calls and broken promises. She was softer, but softer, like silk, not like glass. And silk, I've learned, is impossible to tear. As I lay beside Kevin, the city humming faintly through the windows, I thought of something Domingo said years ago. "You're too soft for this world." Now I finally had my answer. Softness bends. It survives. It learns. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. It simply endures. I whispered it into the dark, a quiet vow to myself and anyone who'd ever been told they were too gentle to make it. They call it soft. I call it steel. And as sleep pulled me under, I felt nothing but peace. Because some love stories don't end in reunion, they end in release.